What is going on, everyone? My name is Drew Spencer with the React and Attack Football Podcast, where we try and go over NFL content from all 32 teams every single day. And boy, oh boy, there's always something going on in the NFL world. And if you like what you hear, make sure to like and subscribe. And let's go.
What an absolute throttling of the Indianapolis Colts by the Niners today as they win 48-27 in in a game where it was closer than the score looks in the first half initially. Um, but the Niners were able to obviously pull this one away and win by big. And by big, we got to start this conversation with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy put up 5 touchdown passes. It could have been 6 had George Kittle had caught a very tough catch. It would have been an incredible catch. So I'm not really holding anything against George Kittle, but for that one. But 5 touchdowns. There was one pick. Threw it a little too high to KB there, and KB gets his hands on it just enough to deflect it to the defender, and heads up play by the Colts defender to make that play. But one of those interceptions in my mind that it's like, you know, it sucks when looking at the stat sheet, but it doesn't take anything away from Brock Purdy's performance tonight, as he absolutely crushed it. I mean, he's the first quarterback to do this for the Niners. I mean, I know they said Joe Montana back then, and that was regular season. He's the first one to do it since Steve Young did it back in '94, where he dropped 6 touchdowns on the Chargers to win the Super Bowl back in '94. Back when I was a baby. But that's what I'm trying to say. Like, Brock Purdy is everything and then some. And yeah, he's dealt with a lot of adversity this season. He got hurt game one. And then he was rushed back because he wanted to be there, and then didn't play a great game, and then sidelined. And Mac Jones, obviously, we know, stepping up for the team in that situation. But now I feel like Brock Purdy, now that he's 100%, like completely, he has been automatic. I mean, they haven't punted since November, right? As the announcers were joking about. That's incredible. That is incredible. And I know it's not just Brock Purdy that is the only person on the offense or anything, obviously, but if you're going to be able to not punt for X amount of time right there, like that's insane. As for the rest of this offense, I wanted to touch base on a couple of things, but the first thing I want to come on base with is George Kittle, who had a spectacular game, over 100 yards and a touchdown. In my opinion, again, just the best tight end in the league, man. Like, with him out there, everything. But besides the good news that George Kittle is an obviously good player, he, unfortunately, in the fourth quarter, in the penultimate drive for the Niners, suffered an injury to his ankle. Now, I'm not sure exactly to the full extent. Now, at the end of the game, when he was congratulating and saying good game to the other Colts players and the rest of the team and stuff, he was jumping around, he was moving around, but obviously we don't know exactly the same extent when it comes to playing a football game as opposed to just walking around on a field. So I'm hoping that George Kittle is okay here, hoping that it was a twist of an ankle. I've had a couple of those in my life and those suck, but I'm not George Kittle. I'm sure that he's able to, shake off those twisted ankles a little bit faster than 12-year-old me back then. But uh, just incredible performance by him. But to shout out again to this offense, Jake Tongas in relief for George Kittle, robbed of a touchdown on a pinpoint throw to him and a catch. It doesn't matter because Brock Purdy threw a touchdown to Christian McCaffrey on the very next play, and it didn't matter. And we had already used a timeout. It wasn't, but Jake Tongas is the guy, man. We spent that money on Luke Farrell in the offseason to have a premier second tight end. And I like that idea because, obviously George Kittle, how he plays, his injury history, things among that. Yeah, it was due for us to try and go out and find a guy. But yet, here's Jake Tonjes, who has been on our practice squad for the past, I think, 2 years, getting his opportunity, and he's stepping up big for the 49ers right now. I know, again, that touchdown that he caught, because it was a touchdown, it doesn't count, but I mean, that hustle, um, everything about it, like, we need to lock this guy up, in my opinion. Like, I mean, I see a lot of Jake Tonjes like, I see a lot of him playing to the same level as George Kittle, or at least the same stylist approach. Like, I'm not going to give up on this down. I'm going to try and do what I can. I'm going to block my ass off. It seems to me that I I think George Kittle and Jake Tonjes and the rest of this tight end room has really meshed and said, hey, like, we're going to develop and stuff. And Jake Tonjes is the guy who has developed the most this year in an absence of George Kittle, who is having an awesome season, but the stats at the end of the year aren't going to tell you that, uh, because he missed so many games with injury. But I got to give a shout out there. And then KB getting his money. It was funny because when he got that first initial grab there, right, and he was doing the little money sign, I was like, "Yo, let's go!" And then it was taken away. And looking back at the play, I was like, "Yeah, okay, sure." He didn't have full possession on it, but then it was so great later on in that game just for him to get another one and hit the same silly. Jawan Jennings, he mossed a guy, like, legitimately mossed a dude, back in the day when I was a kid, back in, like, '09, '08 and shit, they'd be like this, "Oh, who mossed that guy?" That would go on the highlights right there. Jawan Jennings over the middle of the field at one point, comes away with like a 20+ yard reception, just gets his hands up, takes it down, complete possession. That's awesome. um, Imagine if Ayuk was still on this team and wanted to participate. Because dude, like, all these other guys are just stepping up so well. And I love it. I love to see it. The offensive line today, I think, did a very good job. Um, so many of the crafted play action plays were, um, Purdy had all the time in the world to get things done. So I have no complaints about this offense. Defensively, especially in the first uh, half of the game, we were really slipping. I thought we had some really standout plays from, um, especially Upton Stout today. I know that I'm a big fan of Upton Stout, man. Like, he has really caught my eye over this year. It's just such a scrappy, young, you know, defensive back that he's like, what, like 5'9", but he plays like he's 6'2", 6'3", Richard Sherman. How he goes about it, how he handles it. He has got to clean things up a little bit, but God, he is so enticing to see. And Mustafa also coming up making plays today as well. But there were quite a few times where the pressure was just not getting there. And Philip Rivers, and I'm going to talk more about him, but we gave Philip Rivers a lot of time, especially in that first half, and he made us pay for it. So obviously, the first half of the game wasn't great, but the second half, things changed around. Whether it was, just halftime adjustments or anything, but then it was very much like, we're going to play this, we're going to do this, and we put Philip Rivers and the rest of the Colts offense in a bind. We did an amazing job, though, throughout all four quarters in stopping Jonathan Taylor, which was the primary key to victory, was to make and force Philip Rivers to have a good game, which he did. But we at least stomped down on that aspect of the game and helped us propel the victory. So a lot of kudos to the defense in terms of that, but we still need to clean up a little bit more. This was a dominant win, but uh, you know, we got to clean some of this up there if we're going to have a chance to go further uh, into January football. And one more side note about the 49ers in all three phases that we have to understand. The special teams unit today for the 49ers was on point. Um, I felt like whether from the returnage yards from Sky Moore, always finding a little bit more to gain. And I know he didn't get a touchdown or anything crazy like that, but just fighting like that. Obviously, the to start and take away the momentum at the beginning of the game, right after we scored a touchdown to force a fumble on the ensuing drive. I mean, gotta love it from that special teams unit. And that has been one of the biggest problems that not just the Niners, but Shanahan teams in general seem to have a special team. So I'm going to have to give out a great props and to the special teams unit for the 49ers today. We're going to be talking a lot about Brock Purdy and the defense, blah, 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 George Kittle. But I'm going to call out the special teams unit, man, because they had an absolute performance. As for the Colts, the first half was impeccable. Honestly, like the first drive that Philip Rivers had, where he was a general, a true, honest to God, quote unquote, I like to call them field general, where you can see the play, call it at the line. Peyton Manning, when I was a kid, Tom Brady, obviously Phil Rivers, Roethlisberger, we see these guys like that were commanding at the huddle. But I didn't realize how apparent it was that he was doing that and like being so forcible at the audible. And now people could be like, well, he can't throw more than yada 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 and shit on Philip Rivers. But honestly, no, he knew his game. And I'm gonna say this first and foremost. If you want to be great at anything in life, in my belief, you have to know your weaknesses. You have to know the things that are like, hey, like you have to be honest with yourself in the mirror and be like, hey, like I'm really good at this one thing or these three or four, whatever it may be. But this one thing is my hindrance. So if I can't fix that hindrance, I need to do one, two, three steps to get away from that hindrance. So then it becomes not a big deal, right? And I think that Philip Rivers, especially in the first half, he was so good. Like I'm not even saying this as like oh, it's a fun story, Philip Rivers coming back and having a good. No, like I mean it. Like Philip Rivers had a very great game today. Unfortunately, it didn't continue the half because Brock Purdy and the Niners offense was just on a different level today. That being said, you take what Philip Rivers did in that first half and compare it to a lot of other teams, and I mean, he did enough in especially in the first half to win, and then eventually though, but by trailing in the second half and forcing him to throw and deviating away from what Steichen likes to do, where any play can be like an RPO or a handoff or I mean, Philip Rivers played so well to that extent in the first half. They just their defense just didn't have any answer for the 49ers offense. And that's really what it came down to. Eventually Philip Rivers couldn't keep pace, but God, I just have so much respect for him. You have to understand, like I wasn't much of like a big Philip Rivers fan as a kid growing up. I think it's because he played in an era of just incredible quarterbacks. I'm not trying to take anything away from right now, but when there was guys like Brady and Manning and Roethlisberger, and I mean even Eli Manning and Matt Ryan for a little bit, and obviously Aaron Rodgers, and there was just a lot of dudes out there that were Breeze. I mean, fuck. I mean, there was a fuckload of dudes out there at the time that were just killing it. And I always felt to me that Rivers was kind of like the bottom of the totem pole, but God, to see him act and operate in this way, um, still years away from the game, but still able to pick it up at the line of scrimmage. When how many young quarterbacks see this? How many just in general? Like I've never I started thinking about it when I saw Philip Rivers play again, and I was like, damn. Not since I was in my early 20s at the most, or in my teenage years, uh, was there a quarterback that was like, yeah, yeah, get everyone there, follow through, get this shit done. Um, yeah, I thought Philip Rivers played such an impressive game today. But again, you know, the reality of the story is that he's 44 years old and has spent 5 years away from the game. Um, and as admirable as I feel about Philip Rivers, and as good of a game as he had, you could tell that there were limitations to his game and his performance. And again, I'm not here being like, "Oh, I told you so," or anything like. No, like I'm just realistically saying, like Philip Rivers had, in my opinion, probably the best game he ever could have had, but the Colts defense let him down. And also, the Niners defense did a very impeccable job at making sure to contain Jonathan Taylor as much as possible to take him out of the game because, yeah, exactly. So, again, all I'm trying to say is that I appreciate the living hell out of, or I should say, living heck out of Philip Rivers because he came into this, and I know the season, or obviously, yeah, season playoff hopes for Colts fans is dwindled and gone most likely after this game. But I want to say a little hot take here. I think that that might be the best quarterback performance I've seen from the Colts in a long time. Like honestly, like I'm not even saying that to throw shade. Like I mean, like honestly, like he played a really awesome game. So I'm gonna stop gushing about Philip Rivers and the Colts. I feel like a has been or something, but I don't know. Uh, I think he deserves a lot of kudos and a lot of respect. And he had our team on the ropes for a half, and we were able to pull away. And if we weren't able to pull away, yeah, I don't know. I think the Colts win this game. The 49ers already clinched the playoffs. And now with a win over the Colts, the ability to get to the number 1 seed for the NFC is still open and completely in our hands, which is crazy to think about at the beginning of the year. With Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Brock went down for a while, George Kittle went down for a while, and not just to mention those are just the stars. I mean, we've had so many guys miss games or miss a lot of time, and then we're relying on practice squatters or third string men or guards playing at center. This year has been an ultimate master class of a team effort from the coaching staff, from Kyle Shanahan, obviously running this team and offense and everything. Robert Salah, who has done everything so well, and I've never seen rookies develop this fast. Like honestly, um, you look at how Upton Stout has played, and even before he went down, Michael Williams, how he was playing. You see C.J. West, Oliver Collins, guys like that. This defense is just it's been wild. It's been a wild ride, and now we still have a chance to win the number one seed. If you would have told Niner fans that back then, like, oh, you guys might win the one seed, we'd have been like, oh hell no. Like we're not winning that shit. And here we are. And here we are. Now, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We have to go in, play Chicago. That's a tough game, man. I know people might be like, oh, Chicago, Chicago. Nah, like this is a different Chicago team. That's a very tough game. And then at the end of the year, we play Seattle. And we know how efficient and effective they have been this year. So, we get our easy schedule at the end here with two of the hardest teams in the league this year in the NFC. Um, but a lot on the line for Chicago. Chicago could still win the one seed, especially by beating us. That absolutely helps them. Um, but we still control our own destiny, and we are clinched in the playoffs. So like we could technically lose the next two games, right, and be fine. But I think we need to win. I'm really looking forward to this next game against Chicago on Sunday night. We got a lot of stuff to figure it out, and let's hope we can get it. Go Niners.